Okay, so in this video we're going to discuss disinfecting water. It could be cistern water. It could be that there's a large event where they've trucked or towed in water, but the water may not be adequately disinfected. You may be a sanitarian who has to show up and inspect the site. You dip some paper in there for some chlorine test strips that sometimes they use in the field, or you take your water sample and you add a few drops of the DPD chlorine reagent and it doesn't change to a pinkish or magenta color, and you know that there's no chlorine in the water. And you may worry about people getting sick, so you have to do or employ field disinfection. It could be during a disaster, so field disinfection techniques. Some people may have a well at home that needs to be disinfected. Before I get into too many details on this, so I do want to remind you that as we get into the drinking water section, it's important to always be cognizant of disinfection byproducts. If you drink chlorinated water over a lifetime, it's not usually a problem. However, if the water you were using has elevated levels of organic matter or things that would react with the chlorine, those disinfection byproducts could potentially be harmful, and they're carcinogenic over the long term especially. So you don't want to do this all the time, but if it's an emergency, it's very important to be able to treat it. And this is sometimes what the military has to do with iodine tablets or even chlorine, so just be aware. So you got a problem set online that you can use, and in this video here, we're talking about how to disinfect cistern water with Clorox, and Professor Johnson always recommended using Clorox as the example because it was a common percent. If you start buying off-brand bleach, sometimes they have discounted kinds that are really just watered down. So you have to look at the actual percent of sodium hypochlorite or bleach. So how many fluid ounces of bleach are needed to disinfect a cistern that is 12 feet by 12 feet by 8 feet, and it's 3/4 full of water? So I give you a handwritten example of how to actually do this. But it's important to remember that the cistern is 12 by 12 by 8 and it's 3/4 full of water. So sometimes you may have a cistern that you know how much water's in it already. In this case, you have to calculate it. So it's 12 feet by 12 feet by 8 feet, so it's got 1,152 cubic feet of space available in that cistern. Now, it's how many gallons? So you might convert it to gallons now. So 1 cubic foot of water equals 7.5 gallons. So 1 cubic foot of water is 7.48 gallons. So 1,152 cubic feet is 7.48, times that, 8,616 gallons. It's important to remember though, it's 3/4 full of water. So we got to multiply by what 3/4 would be, or 75%. So we scale it down from 8,600 to 6,462 by multiplying by 0.75. Now we have to make it into gallons. And we have to, well, we already got it in gallons, but now we have to know how much bleach does it take. So if 1 gallon of bleach treats 50,000 gallons, so 1 gallon can treat 50,000. Well, we've got to treat a whole lot less than 50,000. We got to treat 6,000 gallons, not 50,000. So we need not a whole gallon. We need less than that. So 6,462 gallons of water divided by 50,000 gallons gives us 0.12924. So about 0.13 gallons are needed. And if there's 128 ounces in a gallon, this is going to be less than 128. It's going to be a lot less. 128 ounces is in 1 gallon. How many ounces are in 0.1294 gallons? So a lot less. So 128 times 0.1294 gives us the answer of 16.5 fluid ounces are needed. I give you another example. If somebody wants this in ounces, you've got to have to do that calculation, so it's good practice. And just getting a little more into private, water needs. Some people have these outdoor cisterns, and they have floating filters in them that help screen anything out, and the water gets pumped into the house. And Even here, there's a filter on the roof water to capture leaves and keep that out of the cistern. You get this floating cistern out here, it gathers all your rainwater, and some people have these nice systems that got the pressure tank, it injects the proper amount of chlorine, and then once it's been chlorinated, it will stay in these retention tanks for several days until people use it. So it's kind of a nice system, like a own drinking water plant right there in their own home. But it's really important to make sure that nothing bad goes down these drains. You don't want oil or grease because your system isn't designed to take that stuff out. So it's really important to protect these systems. These systems have these nice filters on them that keep anything else out, like small pieces of leaves that could have escaped through your first filter that's right here. If you have a pond as a floating source, or as a source water, you may also use one of these filters. So some people may live out in the country and they have a pond that's going to be their drinking water. It may end up getting covered with a lot of algae and there may be fish. So you may have a floating pond filter that has to be anchored out so it doesn't blow to the shoreline and gather a bunch of muck or mud. And then again, the same system applies. Now, if there's a lot of algae and stuff out there in that water, please remember that organic matter will make it through this system, and these organic acids will interact with the bleach, and they will have elevated levels of disinfection byproducts. All right, some people may choose to develop a spring house around their home. If they have a spring and they're going to fix it up to be able to drink from it, and I'm not going to go into too much detail on it. You can just see some pictures here. We're not going to really ask any quiz questions over it or anything like that. All right, so you should be able to remember that how many gallons of water does 1 gallon of Clorox disinfect? The general rule of thumb is what? 1 gallon treats 50,000 gallons. So 1 gallon of bleach treats 50,000 gallons of water. What are 3 alternatives to getting well water to a site? You might use, other than well water, you might have a cistern, you might have a spring, or you can truck the stuff in. All right, we've already kind of reviewed these. If you were given the size of a cistern and how full it was, would you be able to calculate the Clorox need? So you'll need to be able to do that, especially on our quiz or exams that come up with this section. So that's all there is for this section on private water system needs, and I'm going to conclude it there. And again, if you have any questions, you can always email me or call or text me, and we will go from there. So I wish you the best, and thank you for listening.